Hi, welcome to week 4. The assigned reading for this week is the supplemental chapter 15 of the text. It may also be a supplemental depending on what edition you have your hands on. This is another fairly complicated subject on state and local government. There are an incredible variety of governments, particularly at the local level, to the tune of something like 93,000 different governmental units. A lot of actual governing in American government happens to, on the state and at the local level. And the subject actually pairs well with our previous week's subject of federalism, because again, a lot of the governing process involves interactions between institutions at the national, state, and local levels. Um, if you think, for example, about what the Department of Homeland Security does to protect the nation against the threats of terrorism, there's a lot of coordination required both at the state and at the local level. So this week we're learning about state governments and why state governments are particularly important within our federal system of government. In the PowerPoint for this chapter, I draw on a quote from a Constitutional Convention delegate from South Carolina named Pierce Butler, who addressed the convention saying, "We must adopt the wisdom of Solon, who gave to the Athenians not the best constitution he could devise, but the best they would receive." For those of you not versed in ancient Greek history, Solon was the father of ancient, Athenian democracy, and Butler was expressing the hope that the convention would not allow perfection to become the enemy of the good, which is a fancy way of warning against straying too far from what most Americans understood about politics as it was practiced in the day. Most Americans in 1787 didn't think of themselves as Americans. They rather thought of themselves as Virginians, New Yorkers, Pennsylvanians. Um, this chapter does, I think, a pretty good job of explaining why in the middle of the 20th century the states significantly declined in political power, and why the states increased in influence after in the later decades of the 20th century. Another important issue and again, that's something we can talk about, is the rise and fall of the states, or the fall and rise of the states. Another important issue you should think about is how state and local governments fund themselves. At the state level, it's done through a combination of taxes, primarily income taxes, property taxes, sales taxes, and taxes on fees and services, typically in some kind of mix. This is what we call a state's fiscal regime. Most states use a combination of those 5 revenue sources. And if you think about states like Texas and Tennessee that don't tax earned income, what do you think that means? It means that their property taxes and sales taxes are significantly higher. And that means low income folks that might own property won't own it for long because they won't be able to afford the taxes on it. So who do you think that benefits, that kind of tax regime? Typically, it's going to be real estate developers. Um, I'll try to talk about that more when I do my mini lecture on state and local government. I'll have a bit more to say about Oklahoma's tax regime as well. In terms of assignments, this is a big week. We've got the forum, we've got the quiz, and we've got the Unit 1 examination, which covers chapters 1 through 3 plus chapter 15 on state and local government. Be sure to take the week 4 quiz prior to taking the Unit 1 exam, because the material from chapter 15 is included in the examination. All assignments are due by midnight of Sunday, so make sure you get all that stuff worked out. And let's make sure we get everything done on time. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me by phone, email, or just drop by my office. And always remember that the forum is a good place to ask a question. Let's have a great week.